France is a country located in Western Europe. Its overseas regions and territories include French Guiana in South America, Saint-Pierre and Miquelon in North Atlantic, the French West Indies, and many islands in Oceania and Indian Ocean, giving it one of the largest discontiguous exclusive economic zones in the world. Metropolitan France shares borders with Belgium and Luxembourg to the north, Germany to the northeast, Switzerland to the east, Italy and Monaco to the southeast, Andorra and Spain to the south, and a maritime border with United Kingdom to the northwest. Its metropolitan area extends from Rhine to Atlantic Ocean and from Mediterranean Sea to English Channel and North Sea. Its 18 integral regions, 5 of which are overseas, span a combined area of 643,801 kilometers and have a total population of 68.4 million as of January 2024. France is a semi-presidential republic with its capital in Paris, the country's largest city and main cultural and commercial center. Metropolitan France was settled during the Iron Age by Celtic tribes known as Gauls before Rome annexed the area in 51 BC, leading to a distinct Gallo-Roman culture. In the early Middle Ages, the Franks formed the Kingdom of Francia, which became the heartland of Carolingian Empire. The Treaty of Verdun of 843 partitioned the empire, with West Francia evolving into the Kingdom of France. In High Middle Ages, France was a powerful but decentralized feudal kingdom, but from mid-14th to mid-15th centuries, France was plunged into a dynastic conflict with England known as the 100 Years' War. In 16th century, French Renaissance saw culture flourish and a French colonial empire rise. Internally, France was dominated by the conflict with the House of Habsburg and the French wars of religion between Catholics and Huguenots. France was successful in the 30 Years' War and further increased its influence during the reign of Louis XIV. The French Revolution of 1789 overthrew the Ancien regime and produced the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which expresses the nation's ideals to this day. France reached its political and military zenith in early 19th century under Napoleon Bonaparte, subjugating part of continental Europe and establishing the First French Empire. The collapse of the empire initiated a period of relative decline, in which France endured the Bourbon Restoration until the founding of French Second Republic, which was succeeded by the Second French Empire upon Napoleon III's takeover. His empire collapsed during Franco-Prussian War in 1870. This led to the establishment of Third French Republic, and subsequent decades saw a period of economic prosperity and cultural and scientific flourishing known as Belle Époque. France was one of the major participants of World War I, from which it emerged victorious at great human and economic cost. It was among the allies of World War II, but it surrendered and was occupied in 1940. Following its liberation in 1944, the short-lived Fourth Republic was established and later dissolved in the course of the defeat in the Algerian War. The current Fifth Republic was formed in 1958 by Charles de Gaulle. Algeria and most French colonies became independent in the 1960s, with majority retaining close economic and military ties with France. France retains its centuries-long status as a global center of art, science, and philosophy. It hosts the fourth largest number of UNESCO World Heritage Sites and is the world's leading tourist destination, receiving 100 million foreign visitors in 2023. France is a developed country with a high nominal per capita income globally, and its advanced economy ranks among the largest in the world. It is a great power, being one of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council and an official nuclear weapon state. France is a founding and leading member of European Union and Eurozone, as well as a member of Group of 7, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and Francophonie. The oldest traces of archaic humans in what is now France date from approximately 1.8 million years ago. Napoleon became first consul in 1799 and later Emperor of French Empire, 1804 to 1814. Changing sets of European coalitions declared wars on Napoleon's empire. His armies conquered most of continental Europe with swift victories, such as the battles of Jena Auerstadt and Austerlitz. Members of Bonaparte family were appointed monarchs in some of newly established kingdoms. In 1812 Napoleon attacked Russia, reaching Moscow. Thereafter his army disintegrated through supply problems, disease, Russian attacks, and finally winter. After this catastrophic campaign and the ensuing uprising of European monarchies against his rule, Napoleon was defeated. About 1 million Frenchmen died during Napoleonic Wars. After his brief return from exile, Napoleon was finally defeated in 1815 at Battle of Waterloo, and the Bourbon monarchy was restored with new constitutional limitations. France was invaded by Germany and defended by Great Britain at the start of World War I in August 1914. A rich industrial area in the north was occupied. France and the Allies emerged victorious against the Central Powers at tremendous human cost. It left 1.4 million French soldiers dead, 4% of its population. In 1940, France was invaded and quickly defeated by Nazi Germany. France was divided into a German occupation zone in the north, an Italian occupation zone, and an unoccupied territory, the rest of France, which consisted of southern France and French Empire. Vichy government, an authoritarian regime collaborating with Germany, ruled the unoccupied territory. Free France, the government in exile led by Charles de Gaulle, was set up in London. From 1942 to 1944, about 160,000 French citizens, including around 75,000 Jews, were deported to death and concentration camps. On the 6th of June 1944, the Allies invaded Normandy, and in August they invaded Provence. Allies and French resistance emerged victorious, and French sovereignty was restored with Provisional Government of French Republic. This interim government, established by de Gaulle, continued to wage war against Germany and to purge collaborators from office. It made important reforms such as suffrage extended to women and creation of a social security system. A new constitution resulted in the Fourth Republic, 1946 to 1958, which saw strong economic growth. France was a founding member of NATO and attempted to regain control of French Indochina, but was defeated by the Viet Minh in 1954. France faced another anti-colonialist conflict in Algeria, then part of France and home to over 1 million European settlers, Pied Noir. The war concluded with the Evian Accords in 1962, which led to Algerian independence, at a high price. Between 500,000 and 1 million deaths and over 2 million internally displaced Algerians. Around 1 million Pied Noirs and Harkis fled from Algeria to France. A vestige of empire is the French overseas departments and territories. During the Cold War, de Gaulle pursued a policy of national independence towards the Western and Eastern blocs. He withdrew from NATO's military integrated command while remaining within the alliance, launched a nuclear development program, and made France the fourth nuclear power. The revolt of May 1968 had an enormous social impact. It was a watershed moment when a conservative moral ideal, religion, patriotism, respect for authority, shifted to a more liberal moral ideal, secularism, individualism, sexual revolution. In the post-Gaullist era, France remained one of the most developed economies in the world, but faced crises that resulted in high unemployment rates and increasing public debt. In late 20th and early 21st centuries, France has been at the forefront of the development of a supranational European Union, notably by signing Maastricht Treaty in 1992, establishing the Eurozone in 1999, and signing Treaty of Lisbon in 2007. France has fully reintegrated into NATO and since participated in most NATO-sponsored wars. Since 19th century, France received many immigrants, often male foreign workers from European Catholic countries who generally returned home when not employed. During the 1970s, France faced an economic crisis and allowed new immigrants, mostly from Maghreb in northwest Africa, to permanently settle in France with their families and acquire citizenship. It resulted in hundreds of thousands of Muslims living in subsidized public housing and suffering from high unemployment rates. The government had a policy of assimilation of immigrants where they were expected to adhere to French values and norms. Since 1995 public transport bombings, France has been targeted by Islamist organizations, notably the Charlie Hebdo attack in 2015, which provoked the largest public rallies in French history, gathering 4.4 million people. November 2015 Paris attacks, which resulted in 130 deaths, the deadliest attack on French soil since World War II and the deadliest in European Union since the Madrid train bombings in 2004. Operation Chamel, France's military efforts to contain ISIS, killed over 1,000 ISIS troops between 2014 and 2015. Geography. Vast majority of France's territory and population is situated in Western Europe. It is bordered by North Sea in the north, English Channel in the northwest, Atlantic Ocean in the west, and Mediterranean Sea in the southeast. Its land borders consist of Belgium and Luxembourg in the northeast, Germany and Switzerland in the east, Italy and Monaco in the southeast, Andorra and Spain in the south and southwest. Except for northeast, most of France's land borders are roughly delineated by natural boundaries and geographic features. Pyrenees and Alps and Jura to the south and southeast. Rhine River to the east. Metropolitan France includes various coastal islands, of which the largest is Corsica. Metropolitan France is situated mostly between latitudes 41 degrees and 51 degrees north and longitudes 6 degrees west and 10 degrees east, on the western edge of Europe, and thus lies within northern temperate zone. Its continental part covers about 1,000 kilometers from north to south and from east to west. Metropolitan France covers 551,500 square kilometers, the largest among European Union members. France's total land area, with its overseas departments and territories excluding Adelie land, is 643,801 kilometers, 0.45% of the total land area on Earth. France possesses a wide variety of landscapes, from coastal plains in the north and west to mountain ranges of Alps in the southeast, Massif Central in south-central, and Pyrenees in southwest. Due to its numerous overseas departments and territories scattered across the planet, France possesses the second-largest exclusive economic zone in the world, covering 11,035,000 kilometers. At 4,810.45 meters above sea level, Mont Blanc, located in the Alps on the France-Italy border, is the highest point in Western Europe. The coastlines offer contrasting landscapes. Mountain ranges along French Riviera, coastal cliffs such as Côte d'Alberta, and wide sandy plains in the Languedoc. Corsica lies off the Mediterranean coast. France has an extensive river system consisting of 4 major rivers: Seine, Loire, Garonne, Rhône, and their tributaries, whose combined catchment includes over 62% of the metropolitan territory. The Rhône divides Massif Central from the Alps and flows into Mediterranean Sea at the Camargue. The Garonne meets the Dordogne just after Bordeaux, forming the Gironde estuary, the largest estuary in Western Europe, which after approximately 100 kilometers empties into Atlantic Ocean. Other water courses drain towards the Meuse and Rhine along the northeastern borders. France has 11 million kilometers of marine waters within 3 oceans under its jurisdiction, of which 97% are overseas. Forests account for 31% of France's land area, the 4th highest proportion in Europe, representing an increase of 7% since 1990. French forests are some of the most diverse in Europe, comprising more than 140 species of trees. There are 9 national parks and 46 natural parks in France. A regional nature park is a public establishment in France between local authorities and the national government, covering an inhabited rural area of outstanding beauty to protect the scenery and heritage, as well as setting up sustainable economic development in the area. As of 2019, there are 54 regional nature parks in France. France is a representative democracy organized as a unitary semi-presidential republic. Democratic traditions and values are deeply rooted in French culture, identity, and politics. France uses a civil legal system wherein law arises from written statutes. Judges are not to make law but merely to interpret it, though the amount of judicial interpretation in certain areas makes it equivalent to case law in a common law system. Basic principles of the rule of law were laid in the Napoleonic Code. In agreement with the principles of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, the law should only prohibit actions detrimental to society. French law is divided into 2 principal areas: private law and public law. Private law includes, in particular, civil law and criminal law. Public law includes, in particular, administrative law and constitutional law. However, in practical terms, French law comprises 3 principal areas of law: civil law, criminal law, and administrative law. France does not recognize religious law as a motivation for the enactment of prohibitions. It has long abolished blasphemy laws and sodomy laws. However, offences against public decency or disturbing public order have been used to repress public expressions of homosexuality or street prostitution. France generally has a positive reputation regarding LGBT rights. Since 1999, civil unions for homosexual couples have been permitted, and since 2013, same-sex marriage and LGBT adoption are legal. Laws prohibiting discriminatory speech in the press are as old as 1881. Some consider hate speech laws in France to be too broad or severe, undermining freedom of speech. France has laws against racism and anti-Semitism, while the 1990 Gay-Sot Act prohibits Holocaust denial. In 2024, France became the first nation in the European Union to explicitly protect abortion in its constitution. Freedom of religion is constitutionally guaranteed by the 1789 Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. France has a social market economy, characterized by sizable government involvement and economic diversity. France has historically been one of the world's major agricultural centers and remains a global agricultural powerhouse. France is the world's sixth biggest exporter of agricultural products, generating a trade surplus of over €7.4 billion. Nicknamed the granary of the old continent, over half its total land area is farmland, of which 45% is devoted to permanent field crops such as cereals. The country's diverse climate, extensive arable land, modern farming technology and EU subsidies have made it Europe's leading agricultural producer and exporter. Tourism. With 100 million international tourist arrivals in 2023, France is the world's top tourist destination, ahead of Spain, 85 million, and United States, 66 million. However, it ranks third in tourism-derived income due to shorter duration of visits. The most popular tourist sites include Eiffel Tower, 6.2 million, Château de Versailles, 2.8 million, Muséum National d'Histoire Naturelle, 2 million, Pont du Gard, 1.5 million, Arc de Triomphe, 1.2 million, Mont Saint-Michel, 1 million, Saint Chapel, 683,000, Château du Haut Königsbourg, 549,000, Puy de Dôme, 500,000, Musée Picasso, 441,000, and Carcassonne, 362,000. France, especially Paris, has some of the world's largest and most renowned museums, including Louvre, which is the most visited art museum in the world with 7.7 million visitors in 2022, Musée d'Orsay with 3.3 million visitors mostly devoted to Impressionism, Musée de l'Orangerie with 1.02 million visitors, which is home to 8 large water lily murals by Claude Monet, as well as Centre Georges Pompidou with 3 million visitors dedicated to contemporary art. Disneyland Paris is Europe's most popular theme park, with 15 million combined visitors to the resort's Disneyland Park and Walt Disney Studios Park in 2009. With more than 10 million tourists a year, French Riviera in southeast France is the second leading tourist destination in the country after the Paris region. With 6 million tourists a year, Castles of Loire Valley and Loire Valley are the third leading tourist destination in France. France has 52 sites inscribed in UNESCO's World Heritage List and features cities of high cultural interest, beaches, seaside resorts, ski resorts, as well as rural regions enjoy for their beauty and tranquility. Small and picturesque French villages are promoted through association Les Plus Beaux Villages de France. The Remarkable Gardens label is a list of over 200 gardens classified by Ministry of Culture. France attracts many religious pilgrims on their way to St. James or Lourdes, a town in Hautes-Pyrénées that hosts several million visitors a year. Transport. France's railway network, which stretches 29,473 kilometers as of 2008, is the second most extensive in Western Europe after Germany. It is operated by SNCF, and high-speed trains include Thalys, Eurostar, and TGV, which travels at 320 kilometers per hour. Eurostar, along with Eurotunnel Shuttle, connects with United Kingdom through Channel Tunnel. Rail connections exist to all other neighboring countries in Europe except Andorra. Intra-urban connections are also well developed, with most major cities having underground or tramway services complementing bus services. There are approximately 1,027,183 kilometers of serviceable roadway in France. The Paris region is enveloped with the densest network of roads and highways, which connect it to virtually all parts of the country. French roads also connect with Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, Spain, Andorra, and Monaco. There is no annual registration fee or road tax. However, usage of the mostly privately owned motorways is through tolls except in vicinity of large communes. The new car market is dominated by domestic brands such as Renault, Peugeot, and Citroën. France possesses Millau Viaduct, the world's tallest bridge, and important bridges such as Pont de Normandie. There are 464 airports in France. Charles de Gaulle Airport, located in vicinity of Paris, is the largest and busiest airport in the country, handling vast majority of popular and commercial traffic and connecting Paris with virtually all major cities across the world. Air France is the national carrier airline. There are 10 major ports in France, the largest of which is in Marseille, which also is the largest bordering the Mediterranean Sea. 12,261 kilometers of waterways traverse France, including the Canal du Midi, which connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Atlantic Ocean through the Garonne River. Science and technology. Since Middle Ages, France has contributed to scientific and technological achievement. In the early 11th century, the French-born Pope Sylvester II reintroduced the abacus and armillary sphere and introduced Arabic numerals and clocks to much of Europe. The University of Paris, founded in the mid-12th century, is still one of the most important academic institutions in the Western world. In the 17th century, mathematician and philosopher René Descartes pioneered rationalism as a method for acquiring scientific knowledge, while Blaise Pascal became famous for his work on probability and fluid mechanics. Both were key figures of the scientific revolution, which blossomed in Europe during this period. The French Academy of Sciences, founded in the mid-17th century by Louis XIV to encourage and protect French scientific research, was one of the earliest national scientific institutions in history. The Age of Enlightenment was marked by the work of biologist Buffon, one of the first naturalists to recognize ecological succession, and chemist Lavoisier, who discovered the role of oxygen in combustion. Diderot and D'Alembert published the Encyclopédie, which aimed to give the public access to useful knowledge that could be applied to everyday life. The Industrial Revolution of the 19th century saw spectacular scientific developments in France, with Augustin Fresnel founding modern optics, Sadi Carnot laying the foundations of thermodynamics, and Louis Pasteur pioneering microbiology. Other eminent French scientists of the period have their names inscribed on the Eiffel Tower. Famous French scientists of the 20th century include the mathematician and physicist Henri Poincaré, physicists Henri Becquerel, Pierre and Marie Curie, who remain famous for their work on radioactivity, physicist Paul Langevin, and virologist Luc Montagnier, co-discoverer of HIV/AIDS. Hand transplantation was developed in Lyon in 1998 by an international team that included Jean-Michel Dubernard, who afterward performed the first successful double-hand transplant. Telesurgery was first performed by French surgeons led by Jacques Merschos on the 7th of September 2001 across the Atlantic Ocean. A face transplant was first done on the 27th of November 2005 by Bernard Devorchel. France ranked 12th in the 2024 Global Innovation Index, compared to 16th in 2019. Demographics. With an estimated January 2024 population of 68,373,433 people, France is the 20th most populous country in the world, the third most populous in Europe, after Russia and Germany, and the second most populous in the European Union, after Germany. France is an outlier among developed countries, particularly in Europe for its relatively high rate of natural population growth. By birth rates alone, it was responsible for almost all natural population growth in the European Union in 2006. Between 2006 and 2016, France saw the second highest overall increase in population in the EU and was one of only 4 EU countries where natural births accounted for the most population growth. This was the highest rate since the end of the baby boom in 1973. As of January 2021, the fertility rate declined slightly to 1.84 children per woman, below the replacement rate of 2.1, and considerably below the high of 4.41 in 1800. France's fertility rate and crude birth rate nonetheless remain among the highest in the EU. However, like many developed nations, the French population is aging. The average age is 41.7 years, while about a fifth of French people are 65 or over. The life expectancy at birth is 82.7 years, the 12th highest in the world. Major cities. France is a highly urbanized country with its largest cities in terms of metropolitan area population in 2021 being Paris 13,171,056 INH, Lyon 2,308,818, Marseille 1,888,788, Lille 1,521,660, Toulouse 1,490,640, Bordeaux 1,393,764, Nantes 1,031,953, Strasbourg 864,993, Montpellier 823,120, and Rennes 771,320. Since its 2020 revision of metropolitan area borders, INSEE considers that Nice is a metropolitan area separate from the Cannes-Antibes metropolitan area. These two combined would have a population of 1,019,905 as of 2021 census. Rural flight was a perennial political issue throughout most of the 20th century. Ethnic groups. Historically, French people were mainly of Celtic Gallic origin, with a significant admixture of Italic, Romans, and Germanic, Franks, groups reflecting centuries of respective migration and settlement. Through the course of Middle Ages, France incorporated various neighboring ethnic and linguistic groups, as evidenced by Breton elements in the west, Aquitanian in the southwest, Scandinavian in the northwest, Alemannic in the northeast, and Ligurian in the southeast. Large-scale immigration over the last century and a half have led to a more multicultural society, beginning with French Revolution and further codified in French Constitution of 1958. In 2004, Institut Montaigne estimated that within metropolitan France, 51 million people were white, 85% of the population, 6 million were Northwest African, 10%, 2 million were black, 3.3%, and 1 million were Asian, 1.7%. A 2008 poll conducted jointly by Institut National d'études démographiques and French National Institute of Statistics estimated that the largest minority ancestry groups were Italian, 5 million, followed by Northwest African, 3 to 6 million, Sub-Saharan African, 2.5 million, Armenian, 500,000, and Turkish, 200,000. There are also sizable minorities of other European ethnic groups, namely Spanish, Portuguese, Polish, and Greek. France has a significant Gitane, Romani, population numbering between 20,000 and 400,000. Many foreign Roma are expelled back to Bulgaria and Romania frequently. Immigration. Currently estimated that 40% of French population is descended at least partially from the different waves of immigration since early 20th century. Between 1921 and 1935, about 1.1 million immigrants came to France. The next largest wave came in the 1960s when around 1.6 million Pieds Noirs returned to France following independence of its Northwest African possessions, Algeria and Morocco. They were joined by numerous former colonial subjects from North and West Africa, as well as numerous European immigrants from Spain and Portugal. France remains a major destination for immigrants, accepting about 200,000 legal immigrants annually. In 2005, it was Western Europe's leading recipient of asylum seekers with an estimated 50,000 applications. In 2010, France received about 48,100 asylum applications, placing it among the top 5 asylum recipients in the world. In subsequent years it saw the number of applications increase, ultimately doubling to 100,412 in 2017. The European Union allows free movement between member states, although France established controls to curb Eastern European migration. Foreigners' rights are established in Code of Entry and Residence of Foreigners and of the right to asylum. Immigration remains a contentious political issue. In 2008, National Institute of Statistics and Economic Studies estimated that the total number of foreign-born immigrants was around 5 million, 8% of the population, while their French-born descendants numbered 6.5 million. Thus, nearly a fifth of the country's population were either first or second generation immigrants, of which more than 5 million were of European origin and 4 million of Maghrebi ancestry. In 2008, France granted citizenship to 137,000 persons, mostly from Morocco, Algeria, and Turkey. In 2022, more than 320,000 migrants came to France, with the majority coming from Africa. In 2014, INSEE reported a significant increase in number of immigrants coming from Spain, Portugal, and Italy between 2009 and 2012. According to the Institute, this increase resulted from the financial crisis that hit several European countries in that period. Statistics on Spanish immigrants in France show a growth of 107% between 2009 and 2012, with the population growing from 5,300 to 11,000. Of the total of 229,000 foreigners coming to France in 2012, nearly 8% were Portuguese, 5% British, 5% Spanish, 4% Italian, 4% German, 3% Romanian, and 3% Belgian. Language. Official language of France is French, a Romance language derived from Latin. Since 1635, the Académie Française has been France's official authority on the French language, although its recommendations carry no legal weight. There are also regional languages spoken in France, such as Occitan, Breton, Catalan, Flemish, Dutch dialect, Alsatian, German dialect, Basque and Corsican, Italian dialect. The government of France does not regulate the choice of language in publications by individuals, but the use of French is required by law in commercial and workplace communications. In addition to mandating the use of French in the territory of the Republic, the French government tries to promote French in the European Union and globally through institutions such as the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie. According to the 2007 Adult Education Survey, part of a project by the European Union and carried out in France by the INSEE and based on a sample of 15,350 persons, French was the native language of 87.2% of the total population, or roughly 55.81 million people, followed by Arabic, 3.6%, 2.3 million, Portuguese, 1.5%, 960,000, Spanish, 1.2%, 770,000, and Italian, 1%, 640,000. Native speakers of other languages made up the remaining 5.2% of the population. Religion. France is a secular country in which freedom of religion is a constitutional right. The French policy on religion is based on the concept of laïcité, a strict separation of church and state under which the government and public life are kept completely secular, detached from any religion. The region of Alsace and Moselle is an exception to the general French norm, since the local law stipulates official status and state funding for Lutheranism, Catholicism, and Judaism. According to the National Survey of 2020 held by the INSEE, 34 to 38% of the French population adhered to Christianity, of whom approximately 25 to 29% were Catholics and 9% other Christians. At the same time, 10 to 11% of French population adhered to Islam, 0.5% to Buddhism, 0.5% to Judaism, and 1% to other religions. 51 to 53% of the population declared that they had no religion. Catholicism was the main religion in France for more than a millennium and was once the country's state religion. France was traditionally considered the Church's eldest daughter, fille aînée de l'Église, and King of France always maintained close links to the Pope, receiving the title Most Christian Majesty from the Pope in 1464. However, French monarchy maintained a significant degree of autonomy, namely through its policy of Gallicanism, whereby the king selected bishops rather than the papacy. Its role nowadays, however, has been greatly reduced. Although as of 2012, among the 47,000 religious buildings in France, 94% were still Catholic churches. After alternating between royal and secular republican governments during 19th century, in 1905 France passed the 1905 law on the separation of the churches and the state, which established the aforementioned principle of laïcité. Healthcare. French healthcare system is one of universal healthcare, largely financed by government national health insurance. In its 2000 assessment of world healthcare systems, the World Health Organization found that France provided the close to best overall healthcare in the world. The French healthcare system was ranked first worldwide by the World Health Organization in 1997. In 2011, France spent 11.6% of its GDP on healthcare, a figure much higher than the average spent by countries in Europe but less than in the United States. Approximately 77% of health expenditures are covered by government-funded agencies. Care is generally free for people affected by chronic diseases such as cancer, AIDS, or cystic fibrosis. The life expectancy at birth is 78 years for men and 85 years for women, one of the highest in European Union and the world. There are 3.22 physicians for every 1,000 inhabitants in France. As of 2007, approximately 140,000 inhabitants, 0.4%, of France are living with HIV/AIDS. Education. In 1802, Napoleon created the lycée, the second and final stage of secondary education that prepares students for higher education studies or a profession. Jules Ferry is considered the father of French modern school, leading reforms in late 19th century that established free, secular, and compulsory education, currently mandatory until the age of 16. Culture. Origins of French art were influenced by Flemish art and by Italian art at the time of Renaissance. Jean Fouquet, the most famous medieval French painter, was the first to travel to Italy and experience the early Renaissance firsthand. The Renaissance painting school of Fontainebleau was directly inspired by Italian painters, Primaticcio and Rosso Fiorentino, who both worked in France. Two of the most famous French artists of Baroque era, Nicolas Poussin and Claude Lorraine, lived in Italy. French artists developed the Rococo style in 18th century as a more intimate imitation of old Baroque style, the works of the Court endorsed artists Antoine Watteau, François Boucher and Jean-Honoré Fragonard being the most representative in the country. The French Revolution brought great changes, as Napoleon favored artists of neoclassic style such as Jacques-Louis David, and the highly influential Académie des Beaux-Arts defined the style known as Academism. In second part of 19th century, France's influence over painting grew with development of new styles of painting such as Impressionism and Symbolism. The most famous Impressionist painters of the period were Camille Pissarro, Edouard Manet, Edgar Degas, Claude Monet, and Auguste Renoir. Beginning of 20th century, Cubism was developed by Georges Braque and Spanish painter Pablo Picasso, living in Paris. There are many art museums in France, the most famous of which being the state-owned Musée du Louvre, which collects artwork from the 18th century and earlier. The Musée d'Orsay was inaugurated in 1986 in the old railway station Gare d'Orsay, in a major reorganization of national art collections, to gather French paintings from the second part of the 19th century, mainly Impressionism and Fauvism movements. It was voted the best museum in the world in 2018. Modern works are presented in the Musée National d'Art Moderne, which moved in 1976 to the Centre Georges Pompidou. These three state-owned museums are visited by close to 17 million people a year. Architecture. During Middle Ages, many fortified castles were built by feudal nobles to mark their powers. Some French castles that survived are Chinon, Château d'Angers, the massive Château de Vincennes, and the so-called Cather castles. During this era, France had been using Romanesque architecture like most of Western Europe. Gothic architecture, originally named Opus Franciginum meaning French work, was born in Ile-de-France and was the first French style of architecture to be imitated throughout Europe. Northern France is home of some of the most important Gothic cathedrals and basilicas, the first of these being the Saint-Denis Basilica, used as the royal necropolis. Other important French Gothic cathedrals are Notre Dame de Chartres and Notre Dame d'Amiens. The kings were crowned in another important Gothic church, Notre Dame de Reims. The final victory in the Hundred Years' War marked an important stage in the evolution of French architecture. It was the time of the French Renaissance and several artists from Italy were invited to the French court. Many residential palaces were built in the Loire Valley, from 1450 as a first reference the Château de Montsoreau. Examples of such residential castles include the Château de Chambord, the Château de Chianoncieux, or the Château d'Amboise. Following the Renaissance and the end of the Middle Ages, Baroque architecture replaced the traditional Gothic style. However, in France, Baroque architecture found greater success in the secular domain than in the religious one. In the secular domain, the Palace of Versailles has many Baroque features. Jules Hardouin Mansart, who designed the extensions to Versailles, was one of the most influential French architects of the Baroque era. He is famous for his dome at Les Invalides. Some of the most impressive provincial Baroque architecture is found in places that were not yet French, such as Place Stanislas in Nancy. On the military architectural side, Vauban designed some of the most efficient fortresses in Europe and became an influential military architect. As a result, imitations of his works can be found all over Europe, the Americas, Russia, and Turkey. After the Revolution, the Republicans favored neoclassicism, although it was introduced in France before the Revolution with such buildings as the Parisian Pantheon or the Capitole de Toulouse. Built during the First French Empire, the Arc de Triomphe and Sainte-Marie-Madeleine represent the best example of Empire-style architecture. Under Napoleon III, a new wave of urbanism and architecture was given birth. Extravagant buildings such as the neo-Baroque Palais Garnier were built. The urban planning of the time was very organized and rigorous, most notably, Haussmann's renovation of Paris. The architecture associated with this era is named Second Empire in English, the term being taken from the Second French Empire. At this time, there was a strong Gothic resurgence across Europe and in France. The associated architect was Eugène Viollet-le-Duc. In the late 19th century, Gustave Eiffel designed many bridges, such as the Garabit Viaduct, and remains one of the most influential bridge designers of his time, although he is best remembered for the Eiffel Tower. In the 20th century, French-Swiss architect Le Corbusier designed several buildings in France. More recently, French architects have combined both modern and old architectural styles. The Louvre Pyramid is an example of modern architecture added to an older building. The most difficult buildings to integrate within French cities are skyscrapers, as they are visible from afar. For instance, in Paris, since 1977, new buildings had to be under 37 meters. France's largest financial district is La Défense, where a significant number of skyscrapers are located. Other massive buildings that are a challenge to integrate into their environment are large bridges. An example of the way this has been done is the Millau Viaduct. Some famous modern French architects include Jean Nouvel, Dominique Perrault, Christian de Portzamparc and Paul Andrew. Music. France has a long and varied musical history. It experienced a golden age in the 17th century thanks to Louis XIV, who employed talented musicians and composers in the royal court. The most renowned composers of this period include Marc-Antoine Charpentier, François Couérin, Michel Richard Delalande, Jean-Baptiste Lully and Marin Marais, all of them composers at the court. After the death of the Roi Soleil, French musical creation lost dynamism, but in the next century the music of Jean-Philippe Rameau reached some prestige, and he is still one of the most renowned French composers. Rameau became the dominant composer of French opera and the leading French composer of the harpsichord. In the field of classical music, France has produced a number of notable composers such as Gabriel Fauré, Claude Debussy, Maurice Ravel, and Hector Berlioz. Claude Debussy and Maurice Ravel are the most prominent figures associated with Impressionist music. The two composers invented new musical forms and new sounds. Debussy was among the most influential composers of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and his use of non-traditional scales and chromaticism influenced many composers who followed. His music is noted for its sensory content and frequent usage of atonality. Erik Satie was a key member of the early 20th century Parisian avant-garde. Francis Poulenc's best-known works are his piano suite Choice Movements Perpetuals, 1919, the ballet Les Bitches, 1923, the concert Champeter, 1928, for harpsichord and orchestra, the opera Dialogues des Carmelites, 1957, and the Gloria, 1959, for soprano, choir, and orchestra. In the middle of the 20th century, Maurice Ohana, Pierre Schaeffer, and Pierre Boulez contributed to the evolution of contemporary classical music. French music then followed the rapid emergence of pop and rock music in the middle of the 20th century. Although English-speaking creations achieved popularity in the country, French pop music, known as chanson française, has also remained very popular. Among the most important French artists of the century are Edith Piaf, Georges Brassens, Leo Ferré, Charles Aznavour, and Serge Gainsbourg. Modern pop music has seen the rise of popular French hip-hop, French rock, techno, funk, and turntablists, DJs. Although there are very few rock bands in France compared to English-speaking countries, bands such as Noir Desi, Mano Negra, Niagara, Les Rita Mitsiko, and more recently Superbus, Phoenix, and Gojira or Shaka Ponk have reached worldwide popularity. Fashion. Fashion has been an important industry and cultural export of France since the 17th century, and modern haute couture originated in Paris in the 1860s. Today, Paris, along with London, Milan, and New York City, is considered one of the world's fashion capitals, and the city is home or headquarters to many of the premier fashion houses. The expression haute couture is, in France, a legally protected name, guaranteeing certain quality standards. The association of France with fashion and style, French, la mode, dates largely to the reign of Louis XIV when the luxury goods industries in France came increasingly under royal control and the French royal court became, arguably, the arbiter of taste and style in Europe. But France renewed its dominance of the high fashion, French, couture or haute couture industry in the years 1860 to 1960 through the establishment of the great couturier houses such as Chanel, Dior, and Givenchy. The French perfume industry is the world leader in its sector and is centered on the town of Grasse. According to 2017 data compiled by Deloitte, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, a French brand, is the largest luxury company in the world by sales, selling more than twice the amount of its nearest competitor. Moreover, France also possesses 3 of the top 10 luxury goods companies by sales, LVMH, Kering SA, L'Oréal, more than any other country in the world. Cuisine. French cuisine is renowned for being one of the finest in the world. Different regions have different styles. In the north, butter and cream are common ingredients, whereas olive oil is more commonly used in the south. Each region of France has traditional specialties: cassoulet in the southwest, choucroute in Alsace, quiche in the Lorraine region, beef bourguignon in Burgundy, Provençal tapenade, etc. France is most famous for its wines and cheeses, which are often named for the territory where they are produced, AOC. A meal typically consists of 3 courses: entree, starter, plat principal, main course, and fromage, cheese, or dessert, sometimes with a salad served before the cheese or dessert. French cuisine is also regarded as a key element of the quality of life and the attractiveness of France. A French publication, the Michelin Guide, awards Michelin stars for excellence to a select few establishments. The acquisition or loss of a star can have dramatic effects on the success of a restaurant. By 2006, the Michelin Guide had awarded 620 stars to French restaurants. In addition to its wine tradition, France is also a major producer of beer and rum. The 3 main French brewing regions are Alsace, 60% of national production, Nord-Pas-de-Calais, and Lorraine. French rum is made in distilleries located on islands in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. Sports. France hosts the world's biggest annual sporting event, the annual cycling race Tour de France. Other popular sports played in France include football, judo, tennis, rugby union, and pétanque. France has hosted events such as the 1938 and 1998 FIFA World Cups, the 2007 Rugby World Cup, and the 2023 Rugby World Cup. The country also hosted the 1960 European Nations Cup, UEFA Euro 1984, UEFA Euro 2016, and 2019 FIFA Women's World Cup. The Stade de France in Saint-Denis is France's largest stadium and was the venue for the 1998 FIFA World Cup and 2007 Rugby World Cup finals. Since 1923, France is famous for its 24 hours of Le Mans sports car endurance race. Several major tennis tournaments take place in France, including the Paris Masters and the French Open, one of the 4 Grand Slam tournaments. French martial arts include savate and fencing. France has a close association with the modern Olympic Games. After Athens was awarded the first Games, in reference to the Olympics' Greek origins, Paris hosted the second Games in 1900. Paris was the first home of the International Olympic Committee, before it moved to Lausanne. Since 1900, France has hosted the Olympics on 5 further occasions, the 1924 Summer Olympics, the 2024 Summer Olympics both in Paris and 3 Winter Games, 1924 in Chamonix, 1968 in Grenoble and 1992 in Albertville. Both the national football team and the national rugby union team are nicknamed Les Bleus in reference to the team's shirt colour as well as the national French tricolour flag. Football is the most popular sport in France, with over 1,800,000 registered players and over 18,000 registered clubs. The French Open, also called Roland Garros, is a major tennis tournament held over 2 weeks between late May and early June at the Stade Roland Garros in Paris. It is the premier clay court tennis championship event in the world and the second of 4 annual Grand Slam tournaments. Rugby union is popular, particularly in Paris and the southwest of France. The national rugby union team has competed at every Rugby World Cup. It takes part in the annual Six Nations Championship.